In 1924, Britain staked its imperial future on a pair of airships meant to unite the empire and shine as proof of national genius. By 1930, political pride had twisted that vision into a desperate race against the clock. Hundreds of workers raised Cardington's steel cathedrals, each 812 feet long and 158 feet high, only to see everything jeopardized by a minister's deadline. What truly doomed Britain's so-called Titanic of the skies was not just technical failure, but decisions made far from the hangar floor. How did hope become hubris, and what was lost before the journey even began? Parliament's vote in 1924 was unanimous. 118 voices in favour, none against. With that vote, Britain committed £1 million to the Imperial Airship Scheme, a sum that would have bought a fleet of ocean liners or rebuilt a city. The ambition was nothing less than to shrink the world. The white paper spelled it out with the certainty of empire, regular, reliable airship service from London to the farthest corners of the British dominions. India and Australia would be only days away, not weeks. The two airships, R100 and R101, were to be the crown jewels of this vision, each designed to carry 100 passengers and 10 tons of mail at speeds that rivaled the fastest trains. The dream was not just about travel, but about unity. Airships would knit together the scattered threads of the empire, carrying news, officials and families across continents and oceans. The government's language was bold. This was to be a triumph of British skill, a promise that the country could outpace Germany's Zeppelins and American ambition. Cardington's sheds rose out of the Bedfordshire fields like cathedrals of steel, built to house the future. Thousands of workers, engineers and seamstresses poured their labour into the project, convinced they were shaping a new age. For ministers and policymakers, the airships were more than machines. They were a declaration. Britain would not be left behind. The Imperial Airship Scheme was a wager on progress, on pride, and on the belief that the sky itself could be conquered by British hands. Rising above the Bedfordshire fields, the Cardington sheds stood as steel cathedrals, each one a feat of ambition and muscle. Shed 1 stretched 812 feet from end to end and rose 158 feet high, dwarfing the landscape and anything that came before it. The blueprints called for more than just shelter. They demanded a monument to progress, a structure that could cradle the largest airship Britain had ever conceived. Inside, the air was thick with the clang of riveters and the hum of cranes. Hundreds of men and women from nearby villages clocked in each day, their names inked on payroll manifests that read like a roll call for a national project. Some came from the brickyards, others from the railways, all drawn by the promise of steady work and the chance to be part of something grand. Seamstresses stitched together acres of linen and gold-beater's skin for the gas bags, while engineers checked the latticework of girders that would hold the dream aloft. Press photographers captured the scale, with tiny figures perched on scaffolding and dwarfed by the cavernous space. For those who worked here, pride ran deep. The sheds became a landmark, visible for miles, a symbol that Britain still led the world in daring engineering. Yet, as weeks turned to months, the pressure to deliver grew. Schedules tightened and resources once abundant began to feel stretched thin. The workforce pressed on, driven by the hope that their labour would launch not just an airship, but a new chapter for the nation. Lord Thompson's ambition was stamped on every page of the Air Ministry's correspondence. From the moment he took office, he made it clear the R101 would fly to India in time for the Imperial Conference in London. This was not a suggestion, it was a public promise. In Parliament, Thompson told the House that the airship would showcase British ingenuity to the world's assembled leaders. Behind closed doors, his memos pressed the Royal Airship Works for progress reports and firm dates. On the 14th of August 1930, a directive from his office set out the timetable. The R101 must depart before the conference ended in October 1930. The message was unambiguous. Delay was not an option. Engineers and managers already working round the clock found themselves bound to a ministerial clock that ticked louder with every passing week. The schedule left little room for setbacks. Testing hours were rationed, and the pressure filtered down to every rivet and seam. The promise of imperial prestige now depended on meeting a deadline set not by the needs of the machine, but by the demands of politics. Every change made to R101 in the final months came with a cost measured in pounds and inches. The decision to lengthen the hull by 46 feet was meant to solve one problem: insufficient lift, but it introduced new ones. Engineers inserted a sixth gas bag, boosting total volume to over 5.5 million cubic feet. Yet the extra length added weight, and the promised surplus of lift never truly materialized. The engine's Beardmore Tornado diesels arrived 6 tons heavier than planned. Each one weighed over 4 tons installed, almost double the original estimate, but still delivered only half the expected power. With the airship's structure already strained, these engines became a burden the frame could barely carry. The numbers told a story of vanishing safety margins. After all modifications, R101's disposable lift hovered around 5 tons, barely enough to cover fuel, mail, and the official party's luggage, let alone any margin for bad weather. On the eve of departure, nearly all emergency ballast, water meant to save the ship in a crisis, had to be jettisoned just to get the airship off the ground. Testing, once planned as a careful process, was slashed to a single major trial flight, 16 hours and 51 minutes in calm skies. No full-speed run, no test in wind or rain. The technical logs showed what the world would soon learn: R101 was flying on hope, not on numbers. In July 1930, while the R101 struggled with last-minute modifications, its rival, the R100, was charting a course for Montreal. Over the Atlantic, the privately built airship completed a round trip of nearly 6,000 miles, carrying a full crew and distinguished guests. The journey took 78 hours out and 57 hours back, with the ship weathering storms and crossing the vast ocean without incident. The R100's logbook recorded steady progress and safe landings. No drama, no disaster. At the heart of this achievement was Neville Shute, chief calculator and later chronicler of the project. In his memoir, he recalled the methodical test program, the insistence on repeated flights, and the refusal to compromise on safety. Shute's team, working under Vickers' private management, kept to engineering discipline rather than ministerial deadlines. He later wrote with quiet bitterness that R101 was forced into the sky too soon, while R100 had proved what was possible when caution and craft were allowed to lead. The contrast was stark. One airship had shown the future could be safe and grand, the other that pride could be fatal. At 6:30 in the evening on a cold October night, R101 slipped free from Cardington and pointed south, engines thrumming as dusk swallowed the fields. The weather forecast warned of storms over France, but the order was given. Within hours, wind and rain lashed the airship's nose. At 7:06 in the evening, a drop in oil pressure forced the crew to throttle back, speed falling to just under 59 miles per hour. Over the channel, turbulence battered the hull. Somewhere over Beauvais, the fabric at the nose began to tear, exposing the gas bags to the storm. Hydrogen hissed out. The ship lurched, the nose dipping steeply. The crew fought the controls. Elevators struggled, engines roared. R101 dived once, then again, each dive steeper than the last. At 2:09 in the morning, the ground rushed up. Impact came at a 15-degree angle at just over 20 kilometers per hour. Seconds later, fire tore through the wreck, silencing the bridge forever. The Board of Inquiry convened in the weeks after the wreck, sifting through technical logs, weather charts, and the testimony of exhausted engineers. Their verdict was unambiguous. R101 had been flown before she was ready. The inquiry chair read the findings aloud. Insufficient testing, structural changes rushed through, safety margins ignored. Evidence from the logs revealed that only one major trial flight had been completed, with no tests in bad weather. The panel laid responsibility at the feet of those who demanded a timetable over technical caution. On the 9th of November 1930, the Treasury issued the order. The entire Imperial Airship Scheme was cancelled. The Cardington sheds fell silent. R100, the rival that had crossed the Atlantic safely, was dismantled for scrap. The dream of an empire linked by airship ended not just in tragedy, but in a public reckoning that left no doubt where the blame belonged. Today, the Cardington sheds still tower over Bedfordshire, empty but not forgotten. Their silence warns us. When ambition bends to political will, risk becomes tragedy. Technology moves faster now, but pressure hasn't faded. The lesson? Progress demands patience, or history repeats. What's your take? Share your thoughts below.